Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/318. That's 318. Before we chat with today's guest, here's a quick message from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by ISV Connected. If you're an ISV and you need to check out isvconnected.com, a private ISV members-only community that recently launched for the sole purpose of making ISVs successful. Navigating the Microsoft ISV landscape is easier with friends. Sign up today at isvconnected.com. Without further ado, let's get underway and welcome our auspicious guest. Today's guest is from Reading, England. He works for Avanade as the Director of Global Power Apps and Power Platform Center of Excellence. He loves small woodland animals, watching cult classic movies, lots of beer, and likes to cover himself in honey and then roll around in piles of dry leaves while tickling himself. Sometimes he just really wants to show off a terrible Hawaiian shirt. You can find him on Twitter at Tattooed CRM Guy. Chris Huntingford, welcome to the show.
What's happening? Oh, that is the best intro I've ever received to anything in my life. In fact, could we just copy that and do that every time?
Should we run it again? Do you want to see if I can improve on it?
No, that's amazing.
Okay. Because I actually wanted to come in. Welcome to the show, Chris Huntingford.
Oh, the crowd goes wild.
Yeah.
How are you, man? Are you good?
Good, man. And yourself?
Yeah. Awesomeness.
Okay, so the goal of today is to uncover things that people don't know about Mr. Huntingford. And of course, we'll mix in a bit of Power Platform to that story as well.
Oh, you poor bunch.
You ready?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Huntingford, where were you born?
Where was I born? Johannesburg, South Africa, 1983, in a really weird, dodgy little hospital. I think it was actually Joburg General. But yeah, that's me.
How long ago did you move to the UK?
I think it's 7 years now, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, roughly 7. Actually, no, it's 7 years. Yes, 7 years.
So somebody that had, so many criminal convictions like yourself, how did you get into the UK?
I just bribed my way in, man. That's what I do. I actually stowed away in the back of a jet with a bunch of small woodland creatures. And on arrival, they basically followed me out into the fields next door, built a small house made of twigs and leaves, and then stayed there for a while. And then I decided to do some Power Platform stuff.
Nice. Were they badgers?
They were badgers. Yes, there were some were feral actually, but I tamed them. I have them as pets now.
You know what? I think I was there. I might be wrong, but there was a user group in London. It was in the, what office was it in? It was in...
That was that was
Paddington, right?
Yeah.
King's Cross, yeah. Was that the first time I think you got up and spoke and badgers came into play?
Yeah, so it's a weird thing, man. I've always had this woodland mammal obsession since I was in high school, and it was with the moles and things. So I don't know. Dude, I just used to draw moles and Ewoks and things on all over the place. And then I took a bet with Sarah Critchley. I was like, dude, could you bake the word badger into your presentation? And every time you say the word badger or pancake, I'll do something. I can't remember what it was. And she basically used the badger 20 times. And then it also woodland mammals got baked into phone calls with people. So it's they're badgering the data sets, stop being so foxy.
I love it. That's so cool. So cool. So just before we jump into some more details, tell us about those 3 wonderful kids you have and your wonderful wife.
Yeah, so I'll start with Nicole because she's the most important. So Nicole works for an ISV, Microsoft ISV called Mercury XRM. And man, she's doing digital marketing, but it's a weird story because she was in procurement with Mars, the people that make the chocolates.
Yeah.
And she had the kids. Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. I didn't get any free sweets. I'm still disappointed.
That is disappointing.
Yeah. And, basically we had the kids and she was like, oh man, I don't know what to do. And I said, hey, you know what? We should start a marketing company. So I went out with my one friend to a pub that night, got home after several pints, got into gov.uk and fired it up in the morning. We had a company. And then,
nice.
She built some branding and now she's rocking it with Mercury XRM. So she's loving it. She's even doing some Power BI now, actually.
I've heard of Mercury XRM. Do they do a recruitment type ISV solution, is it?
Yeah. So they do recruitments. Software for recruiters. It's interesting because they had actually built their solution the way a Power Platform solution should have been built many years ago in Dynamics. It's awesome.
Yeah. Wicked. I think I first heard of them in the UK. I hadn't heard of that. Do they sell outside the UK?
Yeah. They got a branch in Australia. It's headed up. The whole thing's headed up by a guy called Chris Kendrick. He's a legend, absolute rock star.
Wicked. Very cool. Very cool. Tell us about your journey, just in recent times from, you've been working the last couple of years at Microsoft in the UK subsidiary, and you've obviously resigned and moved on. You've gone to Avanade, back with an old pal of yours. Tell us about what was your thinking? What was that transition for you? And what are you doing now?
Yeah, so it's actually a bit of a weird story. As you know, when I was at Hitachi, Kyle, Will, and I were working together. I mean, we're best of friends, the three of us, and we started up TDG and a whole bunch of stuff. And then I was lucky enough to get the MVP award, and I loved it. Hey, like I got to hang out with you guys all in Seattle and stuff. And I'd always said, if I ever got an opportunity to work at Microsoft, I would. And I got contacted, and we had a few discussions and things, and there was a number of roles on the table. And the technical architect role for the partners seemed like a good opportunity because if you think about it, like there are hundreds of partners all over the world and they're doing some amazing things with technology. And I thought, well, I've worked for one. In fact, in the UK, why not get to know all of them? So I did. Oh, man, it was epic. I got to tell you, Mark, it was one of the coolest jobs I've ever done because I basically spent my days doing Power Platform evangelism with them. And just showing them around. But the one thing I figured out pretty quickly was that as much as I love Microsoft, I just didn't see a path to progression for myself. And it's only because I'm impatient. It's got nothing to do with the organization. Like I wanted something now. And I was willing to put the work in, but I also missed partner land. I missed being in front of customers. So quite honestly, there were a couple of potential partners on the table, but actually Avanade to me seemed like the best bet because number one, in my brain, they've got one of the best global Power Platform practices in the world. Well, global, and there we go. And then number two, I really liked the people, and Kyle was there, and I knew a number of other folk like Carl Cookson, Trisha was going there as well. And I really, really liked the guy, my boss now. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on a podcast. Like he is an absolute rock star. So yeah, man, I decided to jump ship and shoot over, and yeah, it's awesome.
Wow. And of course, I've just heard that Will Dorrington is leaving Hitachi. And of course, my direct assumption was, I won't say what my assumption was and I won't say what I know, but we'll leave it at that. But watch this space, I say to people, watch this space. Yeah,
you know what? You guys have got to remember, Will is like a Tasmanian devil with the brain the size of Jupiter, right? How on earth can any one place or one thing contain that? It's just, dude, the guy is just amazing, right? It's the same as Kyle. Like both of them are just incredible. So when you look at what he's doing and what he wants to do, the place he's going to and the role he's going into is perfectly suited for him, but I'm not ruining anything.
Good man. Okay, so that's Avanade. How many weeks have you been in there now?
So it's 3 months. I've just passed probation. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So they've obviously said, okay, we're going to keep him.
Well, they didn't really tell me I passed. I messaged my boss and he's like, I'm like, hey man, this probation thing. He's like, yeah, you passed. I'm like, dude, do I get a sword? He's like, no, you get some light hazing. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I can deal.
Some light hazing. Yeah. What about, how have you noticed 3 months in, you're a spring chicken there, but how have you noticed the relationship between Avanade and Accenture?
Oh, man, it's really interesting. So I had to be educated by my friend Kayla on this because, she knows Accenture pretty well. Accenture is 605,000 people big. Yeah.
Microsoft big.
Microsoft is 167,000. The biggest of the big four, Deloitte, is about 320. I'd hazard a guess. I mean, I could be wrong.
Hang on a second. That's less.
Yeah, sorry, less. Yeah. So the big, So Deloitte is 320, which is less than 605. Yeah, but
just so half.
Yeah, when I was looking at the numbers, first of all, I was going, okay, well, who's actually driving the boat here from a technology perspective? Because yes, Microsoft make the tech, but they make the tech for people to adopt. Okay. And I was like, okay, this is starting to all make sense when you start to look at the history of the big four and where Accenture came from. And then I thought, well, that's a pretty safe bet. Then I looked at the relationship Avanade have with Accenture, and Avanade are a joint venture between Microsoft and Accenture. And that was interesting to me because I thought, okay, if they're doing stuff, they're obviously going to be working with Avanade a lot, which they do. And I speak to Accenture people every day.
Is that right?
Yeah, the relationship is interesting because it's not, let's put it this way, it's definitely two very different organizations in my opinion, but I really like the culture of a lot of the people. So there's a lot of sharing of information and sharing of knowledge. I do find sometimes that the Accenture folk can be a little bit more, closed with information than the Avanade folk. The Avanade folk have got a sort of culture of sharing. But yeah, I really like working with them.
So just to clarify, this joint venture between Microsoft and Avanade, started, I don't know how long ago, I do know now actually, it was founded in April 4th, 2020, so 21 years ago, that joint venture came about. And I think this is, I don't know, do you know, was this pre-Microsoft having Microsoft Consulting Services, MCS? And they needed partners that, a partner that really would have skin in the game and engage with their technology. Because, I wonder then, because I know Microsoft's percentage is something, what is it, 10% or something like that they're down to?
I think it's much lower. Yeah, it's much lower. I remember at one point it was like 50-50. I'd look at, please don't quote me on that. Yes, I'm on a podcast, but I don't trust my own information there. But yeah, it's much less than that now, which is cool.
Yeah.
But
according to Wikipedia, 39,000 employees just in Avanade.
That's it, man. And that was another thing that was attractive to me because when you look at so think about a hive mind, right? Of like these people that are very similar in thought pattern. I mean, obviously, not everyone can be the same, but there's a similar culture with everyone. Oh, dude, it was just awesome. Like I really just wanted to be involved. And it's something that you can only really see from the inside. It's hard to explain. Yeah.
So this is one thing. I was just speaking with the lead for federal government in Accenture day before yesterday, it must have been, in the US. And he also has a Power Platform division. So do Accenture also do Power Platform separate than Avanade? I would have thought they would have just been, hey, that's our team that does that.
Yeah, to an extent. I think they do. I mean, you got to remember, this is again me being cheeky, and I'm actually quite happy to be it. Think about who's going to do it better, right? So we've got, the Avanade folk have got a deep history in working with Microsoft. I'm sure the Accenture folk have got a good amount of history as well. But I think it's more, around the type of solutions that we'd be delivering. And yeah, I think they do have a capability. So Accenture Microsoft Business Group will have some people in there, but yeah, I definitely think that we would pivot and work together. That would be the goal.
Yeah. So any kind of Avanade employee shows their true mettle by knowing what the word Avanade means or how it came about.
You're not allowed to ask me this.
And it's not like I knew it apart from having Wikipedia open in front of me, but it is the blend of two words, avenues and promenade.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I couldn't remember the promenade part.
Did you know that?
I did. Yeah, they take that when you do this like Go Orange thing, they take you through that whole process. It's really
right.
Cool, but yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Okay, so we're in Avanade now, and of course you're the director of global power apps. And one of the things I wanted to discuss with you is kind of, we've grown up in the last 3 years in an environment where, you go out and build an app for it, right? There's an app for that. Go build an app, build a Canvas app, build a model-driven app. But, use the Power Platform to build an app. And I felt that for some time, people have forgot the word platform in the discussion, right? And it's been build a power something, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, the Power Platform is the assembly of these technologies together, but it is actually a platform which tells me, a platform is something you build on. Like it's not that you might build one thing, you might build many things. Are you seeing a pivot in the market to much more of this approach that it's not about building a single app, but going into organizations and building many apps or creating a culture where, rather than go to market each time we need a new bit of software to do something, we're going to take a different strategy and we're going to adopt a platform which allows us to build multiple apps that meet the different areas of our business.
Yep. I'm going to take a very polite stab at somebody on this call. I'm not going to mention their name.
No,
But
no,
I'm still gonna,
come on,
I'm still
name
gonna,
names.
nope,
Name
I'm
names.
still gonna,
No.
I'm
Just
still,
joking.
I'm still taking the stab. I was told some time back that no one would ever buy a strategic platform for their business. People only buy apps.
Look at Azure, mate.
Mate, well, this is where I'm going, right? So,
Yeah.
because I did look at Azure and I did look at what they were doing, and Avanade have a deep history of selling Azure as well. Anyway, so I was like, no. And even at Microsoft, man, I was talking to people about the fact that, look, an app, if you position yourselves as somebody that builds an app, that's what a customer is going to pay for. And customers out there, if a partner's saying that they're building an app, that's what you're going to get, right? You're going to get an app, which is not what I talk about ever. I mean, an app is just a single digital building brick in the Power Platform. It's one piece. That's like buying a box of Lego of 100 pieces and taking out one piece and saying, this is going to solve my problem.
Yeah.
Which maybe it does. Maybe you need to stick it under the wonky table leg to stop the table from moving when you're eating your lunch. Yeah, cool. Problem solved, right? So first of all, I want to say that the way that I frame this to people is there are two types of things in this world. There's a strategic platform and a targeted solution. What I'm seeing is a massive shift in thinking around just buying targeted solutions. So let's put it this way, man. I know that if I buy my son Adam a box of Lego that's a kick-ass little race car, you know what, man? He's gonna rock that little box of Lego for a couple of days, and you know what's gonna happen to it? He's eventually gonna take it apart and chuck it into the bigger box. But you know what, man? It's still part of the wider platform. Lexi can go and use those pieces to build a fairy princess castle, and that's the epic part, man. You're using this entire wealth of a platform to build out solutions that solve business challenges and problems. And the thinking is now, it's not this immediate gratification. It's not like the petulant attitude of, I need this now anymore. It's going, you know what? From a wider business perspective, our change should not be, I need this targeted solution to solve my problem, but how do I enable my business to build solutions to solve all of these problems?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And in fact, to the person that said no one would ever buy a strategic platform,
yeah, because I was just going to say I can't see any blood from that stab, and but okay, we've rounded it back to the person that said that. That's good. Now, the thing is, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a scenario here, and what I want you to do is tell me how you would turn this into a platform discussion.
Okay, yeah, I'll give it a crack.
Okay, so some years ago, and I mean, this is just me riffing, right? It's just come to mind. I was dealing with the Federal Aviation Authority in Australia. And they wanted an app to register everybody that had a drone, right? They wanted a registration system, which, of course, this is actually pre-Power Platform. This is when we would just take XRM, right, and build out an app for that, right? So case management solution, put a portal on the front of it. People can register their drone, blah, 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 whatever details they needed to do as part of that. Now, that's a point solution, right? It's an app that solves a problem that was pressing at that point, which is how do we register or control this proliferation of consumer drones that had hit Australia? Yeah. How do you take that conversation with a customer that you might have engaged? That's why they've brought you in. That's why they're interested in chatting. How do you throw that out into getting them to think more broadly than just this app because it's the flavor of the month or the urgent need within the business right now?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways, and it depends on how open the customer is for me being candid. But yeah, I don't really have another route, to be honest. So basically, think of it like this, right? You go ahead and you build out that app, and the customer pays X amount of money for a set of licenses to use that app or solution, at least. So say that solution is like a collection of apps and flows, and maybe some Power BI, and you're whacking some PVA there, and then you got your data and Dataverse. I'm just chucking stuff in there.
Riffing.
So you pay a bunch of money for those licenses, and you build that app and you solve the problem, right? Or that solution, and you solve the problem. The customer's pleased as punch, right? And then you say, listen, guys, I want you to know something. And you might bring this up before, during, or after. You say, look, you've just paid to have the Power Platform implemented in your business. You've got the Power Platform. You've now got the Lego box, right? Which is amazing. So now you've solved one problem. What about using this to solve other problems that you've got? So think about things like the proliferation of spreadsheets across your organization with non-secure data. Think about the fact that with those drones, right, how do you manage your airfields? What about facilities management? How are you doing things like health and safety? Like what if a drone crashes into something or hurts somebody? How are you managing all of that? Like, let's chat. And they might say, hey, we've got SaaS system X, we've got outdated access databases, we've got all these Excel docs, we've got Karen in accounts building out all these things, we've got Jeff in supply building out all of this stuff. Like, we just don't know. We would love to bring it all in. And I'll say, look, guys, you paid for the licensing, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So why don't you use the bricks? Let's use them. Let's do some digital transformation here. Let's change the way you do things, right? Now, this is where you have to do things like design thinking, art of the possible, and really get the customer excited. And this goes two routes. And I always get quite excited about this, because the first route is you have to get IT on board and say, yes, the platform needs to be approved because you've just bought a whole bunch of stuff from it. But the second thing is, now you have to enable people. The other route is around your citizen side. So the people that would normally use Access and Excel and, whatever to build out their solutions, how do you enable them? Now, what you've done is you've taken a single targeted solution, okay, and said, we've solved the problem. You've gotten the bang for your buck from your licenses. You paid for it. Let's do more. You've got all this stuff already. And that's the whole thing, right? With the targeted solutions, they do work hand in hand with the platform, because what you'll find is that the moment you sell a strategic platform into an organization and people pay for those licenses, they have to find ways to use it. And that always goes against their P&L, right? Like, if you buy stuff, you have to use it. So who is actually using the software? And that's where we find organizations adopt fast. And the more targeted solutions you can add that add value within the platform, the more bang they show for their buck. The more bang they show for their buck, the better the person looks that brought the platform in. Mm-hmm. That's the short story.
I like it. Do you see that there's a timing, as in knowing the timing to bring the platform story into play? Because what you just showed there, when you took my drone aviation example, it's almost like build the app, but then, in other words, you've secured the deal. They're your customer. Then is it kind of a second phase of going back in and going, hey, awesome, that's up and running. Now let's expand the story. So it's a land and expand, story. It's a you've got your foot in the door, or do you feel no, you should be pitching it up right up front before you've even got the deal? I
do both. More than anything up front, actually, because when we're going up against SaaS providers, which is fine. I mean, we can talk SaaS solutions till I'm blue in the face. I mean, great. The first thing I do is I say, that's cool. We can solve the problem. We can build this for you with X amount of services time, or we can enable you to build it yourself. When we do that, we're changing the story, because what we're actually then doing is saying it's like a merged, sort of a combined team of people building out the solution that solves the problem. But then we're saying, look, remember, this is a platform. Look for other things. And quite often, Mark, more often than not, we walk into organizations where they're looking for something like this. You flick on the Center of Excellence starter kit, just that reports, and they've got loads of it already. I mean, the shadow IT is massive, right? They've got loads of it already in their organization. Yeah. So it's kind of like, well, it's there. You may as well use it. And that's what I find, like selling the platform up front with the fact that you can build the targeted solution is a better way than bringing it in later. Yeah. However, sometimes it is the right thing to do depending on the criticality of the work stream. Mm-hmm.
I heard a story some years ago. I was in the US at the time, and it was a health agency, so responsible for healthcare over a state. And they had identified well over 200 applications within their business that had been acquired over time as point solutions. From memory, 109 of these applications were some form of either case management and or ticketing type systems. And they had identified over 90% of those could be replatformed as they came to end of life. And one of their big challenges, why they had gone down this journey and this path, was because, one, for every bit of software an organization has, there is an overhead associated with that software, right? There might be ongoing maintenance fees associated. There's a security and compliance issue. Is that bit of software that we built 5 years ago still compliant with today's rules, that might be needed to be enforced? The big one, security. We're seeing more and more major hacks, client data being lost. Most recently, on my radar is I use Ubiquity Networks, a tool, their Unify range to run my home network. I just made myself a hacking target there. Towards the end of last year, they were compromised, most likely an internal compromise, where, two-factor authentication, etc., had to be reset on everybody's account, blah, 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 or, reset your passwords, things like that. So there's an ongoing security is a big issue for any corporate, account. Yeah. And of course, every time you add another piece of software that might have, might not have single sign-on, it's another kind of point of entry or risk factor. And then you go on, you've got every time you have a new piece of software, there's going to need to be unique training for all new staff coming into the organization for that piece of software, right? So you don't have any consistency of interface. I think some of the success of Office and where Office started off as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, publisher or something way back in the day, it proliferated because the ribbon was kind of similar in all the applications. The layout, the metaphor of the UI was consistent. So if you had worked with Word, it wasn't a big jump to go to Excel, one for writing, one for numbers type thing. And for every application that you have in your business, you've got this overhead of training then of staff, and the list goes on, right? Like the biggest issue or problem I found back in the day with Access databases and all the myriad of apps that were built out of those, or even further back, Fox Pro, things like that, was that, the world changed in how we communicated. Email became the massive primary, communication. We played that forward. We've got chat messenger, all these different type of ways of communicating nowadays. And the old software never had that interface layer or couldn't keep up with the way businesses were pivoting. Where you take something like the Power Platform, you've got that consistent UI. You've got a company that is absolutely laser focused on security out of the box, right? Right back from, hard lessons learned back in around Windows 95 time, where Bill Gates said, from now on, we're going to secure by default. Now, it's always been a big attack platform because it's got the biggest user base in the world. So any hacker's going to always see it as a target. But the list goes on as to why a company should be thinking more holistically as its strategy for a platform play. What's your take on that?
Okay, so there's a load in there to unpack. I'm going to try and go from the beginning. Okay, so first things first. When we talk about the platform, there is risk, and I'll be quite upfront. There is risk of generating more shadow IT if it's not managed properly. So that's point number one. So yeah, you got to make sure that gets locked down. But the comeback to that is, I think Ryan Cunningham said it once on stage. He was like, better a governed free market you know than a black market you don't know. So man, they're gonna do it anyway.
He's good at those, right?
Mate, he is. He's so good. I love that guy. Like they're gonna break stuff anyway. Like I see users the same way I see my children sometimes. If you don't give them toys, they're gonna find their own and break those. So just rather give them the ones that don't make a noise without the spikes and the nails in them. So look, here's the thing, right? Yes, you're 100% correct. I think in the platform layer, and I'm being very careful how I'm going to word this now. In the platform layer, Microsoft look after things like security and certain governance and compliance to an extent. Right. However, when you're looking at the app builds, so things like training and support and all that, that's on the business, man. Like Microsoft ain't going to be training everyone in every single Canvas app Karen from accounts builds. And that's where the overhead goes on the business. And there's a big risk there because if that isn't managed correctly, actually you're creating more of a problem. So one of the risks we see in the Power Platform, other than, let's say the business layer rather than the platform layer, and you bang on, Microsoft's got all that sorted, is the fact that you can actually cause more problems. So what I say to people is this. I say, listen, first of all, make sure technically the platform is locked down correctly, which it is. I mean, you can maintain all sorts of things with data and all of that, with data loss prevention, and you can fiddle security. That's pretty obvious. The thing that worries me is the SaaS version of the app that gets built, right? So Karen in Accounts builds this kick-ass accounting solution that does like timesheets, right? I'm not saying accounting as in like ledger. And, she spits that out to the whole business. Point number one, what if it's built on Dataverse? Every single person needs a premium connector. They probably won't be able to use it if you've got 25,000 users, right? So there's a whole bunch of things to take into consideration. And this is where I say, even from a thing like user experience, user interface, if you build a line of business solution in a Canvas app, which you should never do, by the way, you're probably going to cause more of a problem because then you have to go and test. You have to build automated testing scripts. You have to do training. You have to do load testing. So there's like bundles of stuff to unpack there. So what I say to organizations, before any of this stuff happens, even if they're partially down the road, I'm like, guys, you need to have the Center of Excellence component put in. And I'm going to qualify what that is, by the way, shortly. And in doing that, you're going to save yourselves a lot of time and money, right? And the reason I'm going to qualify the concept of Center of Excellence is because, yes, Microsoft have built, and kudos to Manuela and team, they built a kick-ass version of the starter kit. But the name, the point is in the name. It is a starter kit. You plug that in. It doesn't solve all your UX and UI problems magically. It doesn't give you everything you need, right? So as much as like I would love to say that, everything about the platform is great, there is some risk, and you do need to have that sort of level of the COE. And in my brain, a Center of Excellence, and this is so important, if anyone takes anything away from this call, this should be it. It is a mixture of people, process, and technology. It cannot just be one of them, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at what partners do, and I'm going to make a shameless plug here because I really do love what Avanade do, they figured this out. And there are a number of other really amazing partners that have gotten this right, like Andrew Welch in AIS. Mm-hmm. It's really about combining those areas and helping and guiding, not just governing, but guiding the organizational units to, number one, what is the standard for user experience? Let's build out a set of components. If you do more guidance up front, you do less governance later on. And therefore, the COE becomes more about a safe place for people to work rather than this thing that makes all the rules and stops you from rolling the balls down the alley, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Man, that was a rant. I'm sorry. It's like just all came out.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good. I mean, one thing that kind of, I just want to clarify there, you said you shouldn't use Canvas apps for mission critical situations. Was that right?
No, don't use Canvas apps for line of business solutions.
What you thinking there?
Yeah, the reason I'm saying that is because mission critical is fine to an extent. I mean, just remember, complex is not parallel to mission critical. It's sometimes perpendicular, right? Mm-hmm. So I can have a mission critical solution that's a button, mm-hmm. and that button could have a shed load of flows that fire off behind it and do some crazy things, right? But the Canvas app could just be a button, okay? So mission critical is fine to an extent. When I say line of business, what I mean is that when you look at that Microsoft chart, there are 5 bubbles, right? And on the bubbles, it says personal productivity, team productivity, complex, mission critical / line of business, mission critical, and then enterprise ready or organization wide, right? I think Canvas apps being used as things that are, I want to say, highly complex, highly mission critical are dangerous. And the reason I say that is because the Canvas app UX, as much as people think it is unlimited, it is definitely limited, okay? There are a certain amount of controls and components that work on a screen. You get performance issues when you have more than X amount of controls. If you're not using things like concurrence against like loading certain things in certain screens, you're winging loads of variables in there, like global variables and things. If you make that mission critical and then 22,000 users jump on that system and start using that app, it is going to break. You stick that entire Canvas app on a SharePoint list and oh man, hey presto, you've got scalability issues as well, including data issues. So the reason I point that out is because it's not like you have too little room to work. I think you have too much room to build something amazing. Mm-hmm. At least in model-driven apps, you lock down, like the whole UX is sorted out for you. The whole business process flow functionality is sorted out. You're not having to navigate between millions of screens. You sort it out from a compliance perspective. It's all accessible. So that's all done for you, right? What I'm very interested in is what was announced at MBAS, and that's the custom pages functionality. I'm wondering if that's going to bridge that gap.
Yeah, it does allow for some very complex scenarios, right? That new pages feature. And it is kind of the drawing together even further the combining of Canvas in model-driven apps.
Yeah, I think it was always going to come, man. I think, when this all came about, and I remember chatting to you a couple of years back about something like this, I've always had it in my head. I always thought like model-driven is amazing, right? I love model-driven apps, but they can be a little bit like challenging from a user experience perspective.
Yeah.
I love Canvas apps because it reminds me of object-oriented programming, like in Delphi, and it's just kick-ass and easy to use. But why could they never have just brought the experience together? And then obviously with the release of PowerFX and that going to be moving across the rest of the platform, dude, this, in my opinion, is a game changer. I mean, we're gonna blow people like Salesforce and Mendix out the water with this.
Mm-mm. I don't think it was ever, the reason it took so long is that it wasn't a technology issue. I think in my mind and my observations, it was always a internal ownership of different parts of the tech stack at the time that these transitions happened.
Man, yeah,
and you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah. So thinking forward, back to, you said you just brought up that we had a discussion some years ago, and one of the things in that discussion I remember asking you is that, a lot of what we do is storytelling, to customers, and we paint a picture, we tell stories of other customers that have done awesome things. And one of the things we discussed there is that, is there a way to some degree, to have a discussion with a customer when we're thinking much broader than just app building, but platform stories, and to get their brain thinking, and I said to you, I think at that time, I think is there any function inside the organization that involved a clipboard, and you would go, and on this clipboard would be a template. And let's say, I'll use an aviation example, which is, relating, because I've been involved in this in the past, and that, air bridges to get onto onto your plane, back when we used to fly, you'd go through an air bridge, right? That connected the plane to the actual airport as such. And they required inspections, right? There were compliance inspections that safety officers would come along, and I would call that a typical clipboard job, right? Is the hydraulics working correctly? Tick. Did I stress test the hydraulics using whatever standard? Tick. I noticed some rust here. Oops, we need to put an X and a note, So clipboard-based functions, and across a lot of organizations. I'm even thinking, of chatting with Manuela when she was in Virgin Atlantic, and they would have, a steward on the plane would walk through the plane. Do you like milk in your coffee, or tea, that type of thing. And they would fill it out on a clipboard. It was, it might have been, an app that somebody had created on a tablet or something like that. But when you think of classifying, and another classification was one I just brought up before, which was anything that is kind of like a ticketing system or a case system. Something needs to be managed through to an output or a completion or a validation. Have you thought any more about what type of categories different business apps sit in this regards? What other ones do you see? What are the patterns you see?
So are you talking about like you leveraging kind of core elements of the platform to solve problems?
So building apps that solve business problems, and you want to jog the customer's thinking around their business. As I'd see it as part of a design and visioning type workshop. Any other kind of use cases that you see commonly cropped up over your last 3, 4, or 5 years in business that you can, if you bring this up, you're going to find gold, right, to have a discussion around the platform.
Yeah, so I've got a different perspective on it actually, and I'm going to try and share both. I
like it,
and hopefully it's going to make sense. So the first thing that I've realized very quickly is that in any organization, as much as they want to speak the Power Platform language in the beginning, they probably don't. Man. I mean, look, I've dealt with everyone that I have like huge amount of pro devs in there, which is awesome, and they're busy whacking out code and building out these epic apps and like React and stuff, and building out crazy flows and also crazy logic and things like Logic Apps and Azure Functions, which is epic. Okay. And I've spoken to organizations that literally have no cooking clue about what an automation is or what an application is, right? So what I found, point number one, is that depending on the industry, there are typical type scenarios that they face that we know are problematic. Okay. I mean, retail is a classic one where the inspection type solution or the, floor walker scenario is classic, right? So, okay, in retail, they're likely going to have issues around getting data from the floor into System X and doing A, B, and C or taking orders. Manufacturing is a good one as well, where inspections is a really key one. A big one in legal is the fact that, lawyers ain't going to build anything, right? They're going to outsource what they're creating, but their problem is data, where they don't care what app they're using. They just want to make sure that they get their documentation correct, right? And then other great examples around financial services is around process automation. Dude, they have so many people that are employed to sit at a keyboard and double capture information, right? So it depends on the industry. That's point number one. Point number two is that if you take the industry away, yes, there are some very point scenarios that I know. The moment somebody says, I have a spreadsheet that does X, which is, I'm not kidding you, man, 80% of the time, I know that I've got a solution to solve the problem. When you have, let's put it this way, the way that I think they would phrase it is more a process that needs refinements. So as an example, we spoke to an organization that was dumping leads inside an Excel spreadsheet, and then they were getting transmogrified into JSON, and then that JSON was taking them and putting them into Salesforce and the moment data has to move a lot without changing too much, Power Platform, right? The classic clipboard solution that you and I spoke about before was typical. I mean, I think I'm a little bit past that one though, because that's too easy to solve.
Yeah. It's an easy win, right? Easy win.
Yeah. The other one that I see quite a lot in with PVA actually is an internal utilization of it, where you have a bot that people are using to ask FAQs on like HR sites, that type of thing. Power BI is an easy win. Data consolidation is a great one. So we've got system X that doesn't talk to system Y. How do we make sure that we can compare information or bring data together to actually, one UX? So the good example there is SAP, right? And nobody wants to integrate directly to SAP. It's just a pain. So yeah, even the SAP connector in the Power Platform it's good, but we need more. So using things like, custom connectors, the SAP connector, Canvas apps, munging data together inside the Canvas app and then feeding that back out through patch statements. Anytime that you need data from multiple sources served up in one place for interaction, Power BI embedded as well with Canvas. I mean, there's hundreds, Mark. Like basically everywhere I go, literally in every single discussion I have, I can think of a reason to put Power Platform in, except for one.
What is
the only time it comes up where I say no is where they say, we need an app that is external facing for like a B2C scenario. Then I say, guys, I'm sorry, but that's probably a React or Xamarin scenario. You couldn't even use portals for that.
Yeah. I would also
sense.
say when their primary use case is offline, primary use case.
Okay, so I've got something interesting to tell you. With the offline functionality, I've got a phenomenal colleague in Avanade called Joy, right? And she is just, man, she's amazing. So she recently posted a blog post about mobile offline, and she has managed to build some insane stuff in Canvas offline, right? And I'm talking like using collections. She calls them dirty collections, writing forward, writing back, even doing some elements of data checking inside the collection, which is bonkers as well. But yeah, man, if you can find her, Joy Kirkwood, she's absolutely phenomenal. The blog post she wrote on this stuff, man, I would give her a medal for. But when you're talking about offline as in bulk offline, like huge amounts of data, huge amounts of relational data, high security type stuff, especially with app translations. So if you've got a Canvas app that needs to work in multiple languages and you have language tables, it's off the cards.
Is she based in Seattle?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I got her here.
Man, if you could put a link in the show notes, man, she's unbelievable.
Wicked. We'll get that into the show notes. Look at this. We've smoked our time and we've only scratched the surface, but no surprises there. Listen, I wanted you to tell me what are the kind of 1, 2, 3 stories that you tell that illustrate, as in the stories that you tell in business around the Power Platform that, I always have a bunch of across my career. I can go, I have a scenario and I can pull a story out. They're kind of, are they case studies? But what are those kind of standout projects that you've seen or been involved in that you are like, whoa, that is awesome. That is hot. That's wicked,
Yeah. Okay. So I've got 3 that I use, right? And I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail, obviously, to protect the partner, but like the first one,
scrub the names and faces and their social security numbers and things like that. Yeah.
The first one is I implemented my first ever offline Canvas app at a open canopy bus tour organization in the UK. They do like those, and they used to go to trade shows, man. And it's the simplest use case I've ever seen, where they would go to trade shows, they would capture leads, and those leads needed to go back to a system, not Dynamics, by the way. And man, they needed offline. They gave me a form with about 150 fields on it. And I said, no, we're not doing that. We're not going to a trade show and capturing 150 fields from, Karen in accounts because she's just there. You're going to refine the process. So we built a proper app. We got them down to about 20 fields, proper questions, did some really smart stuff around getting data from other places. And it was offline. It was a really kick-ass, simple app snack, worked perfectly, and they didn't need anything more. The second one is we were doing so colleagues of mine, Mr. Hill, and I went to a local government organization in the UK, and we had initially pitched Dynamics, and we were beaten by another partner. And however, the partner unfortunately didn't get the whole thing right. So we went back in, and actually we were able to consolidate a bunch of data directly in Dataverse. This was obviously in a demo. The project was a lot larger than this. And then using multiple processes. So in local gov, they've got like loads and loads of processes, right? Just bringing them one at a time. And the example people would say to me is they would say, hey, that's a case management solution. I'm like, well, it kind of is. However, you're not going to put 2,500 fields on the case entity in Dynamics.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing that was important for them is they needed quick adoption at a good cost, right? So not paying $67 or whatever it is for a Dynamics license. They needed the departmental users to pay a smaller amount.
Yep.
They could use Canvas apps. They had a big old model-driven app that they were used to use the processing in, and Dynamics was snapped on top of that whole solution as well for call center. So that's one. And then I think the last one, which is probably, I would say, like, it's not necessarily Power Platform, but it kind of is to an extent, but it's more a center of excellence. And this wasn't really me. This was more something I'd picked up, is that there was an organization that started out with this whole concept of the targeted solution piece around, we need to buy a whole bunch of SaaS solutions. They're an oil and gas company. And what we need to do is we need to prove the value of the platform, which was really cool, man. So they did things like well inspections and just loads of stuff. Yeah. And that actually, because that was so successful, it started driving interest in other parts of the business. Like, how have they managed to build this stuff so fast? And the concept is that they kind of made this viral, pardon the pun from a COVID perspective, I'm sorry, but they made Power Apps especially viral in the org, where people started picking up this thing like Excel and saying, hey, we can do some really good stuff. And actually, it grew so much that they stopped focusing on the targeted solutions, let all the SMEs build them. They were focused on building the critical stuff and actually just managing the piping in the platform. So, like, think of it as, the operational piece. And, like when you buy a house, you just assume the piping and the gas all works and the electrics work. Yeah. That's what they were managing. And the users were building out these solutions. So those are my three.
I love it. So good. And just in my mind, I was like, another 20 questions came to mind.
I know, it's so bad.
Yeah. So we'll kind of cap things out there. I think we might do another show in a couple of months' time.
Cool.
As things evolve, it's a more exciting time than ever, I feel, to be in this space. The opportunities abound everywhere.
I was watching what Ryan was presenting at MBAS the other day, and I was like, man, I just feel so privileged to be part of this, because this is where it's at. Power Platform's where it's at.
Yeah. Okay, you ready for your quick fire questions?
These always make me nervous. Go ahead.
Do you know what I did? I went and found the hardest questions I could find, because I'm like, let's see what Huntingford comes up with these.
Yeah.
But before we go there, do you recommend that I get Joy Kirkwood on one of these to kind of explore her brain and insights of building solutions?
There are a couple of folks, but I definitely recommend if you can get Joy. Also, Claire Edgson.
Claire, you're going to do me intros on LinkedIn for all these, right?
Dude, she's a Power Platform sorceress.
Yeah.
She's amazing. Yeah, probably one of the most technical people I've ever met.
Wow.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Epic. Who else?
I would definitely suggest, let's have a think, right? Kayla's really good. Kayla Bloomfield, she's doing FinOpsy type stuff though. So we're talking around Power Platform licensing. Yeah, I would definitely say, who else? I've gone blank. There's lots of people. Yeah.
That's good. I'll let you come back and anyhow, let's not delay any longer, and let's smash you with these questions.
Oh, shucks.
Okay. Don't lie to me.
Yeah, I won't.
Who was your first love and when?
Actually, my wife now in high school. Boom, boom.
Wow. How old?
Yep. I was 17, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
If you could buy your dream home, what is one weird room or feature you would have in it?
It's not really a weird thing. I'll probably have a music room or an arcade. It would have to have an arcade. Like that's wait, I'm changing my mind. An arcade in water that's safe and with a bar.
Nice. I like it. What stereotype do you completely live up to?
The tattooed bad attitude hooligan.
Nice. I like it. What's your love language?
words of affirmation. Yeah.
You're a GC.
What?
I didn't say the words. You know what a GC is, right?
No.
Okay. Would you rather be gossiped about or never talked about?
Definitely gossiped about, man. I'm an attention whore.
100%. Who are the 3 people you want on your team if there's a zombie apocalypse?
Yeah, Nicole, man, definitely. She could kill something with anything, man. Honestly,
Nice.
like I've seen her.
So that's
She's
your
cool.
wife?
Yeah. I'll definitely take my friend Michael, the guy I've known for years. He has fists like wrecking balls, man. He's skinny, but I've never seen anyone take out zombie-like people before.
Nice.
And then I'll probably have to say either a combination of Will and Kyle, like put together, like Weil or Quill, and like they would be this guy, the Daryl guy from what's it, that horrible zombie show with a crossbow, but that explodes stuff. Oh man, I've got this whole thing in my head now. I've made up a story.
I love it that you've merged their names together. That's gone with it. And you've tried both ways. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Mr. Huntingford, it's been a pleasure, as always, to have you on the show. It's been a while since we've shared a beer or a cheeky durry or a wander in the early hours of the morning down some back streets in Stockholm.
I miss it, man. I miss it.
Mate, miss those days, eh? But it's been great to have you on the show.
Dude, thank you honestly very much for having me. It's been super fun. I actually just like talking to you. So, whether you recorded this or not, it was great.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Applications MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. Let me know why they would be awesome, and perhaps we can get them on air. Please like and subscribe in your favorite podcast player. If you want to leave a review, go to nz365guy.com/review. None of you have been reviewing lately. I'm getting nothing but crickets. Perhaps these shows are shit. Anyhow, stay safe out there and see you next time.